All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Adam Mitchell. I am one of the school systems lawyers at Barrington Smith, and along with my colleague Bill Gilkison, we're working with the school board on the redistricting process. I want to just say at the outset that this this presentation is about redistricting for voting districts for the school board. It is not related to student assignment or where kids will go to school. So whichever of these plans are adopted or a different one will have no impact whatsoever on what school students are assigned to. It will modify what board member you will vote for, or at least it might, depending on what map is selected. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you to those who are on Zoom. Particularly appreciate it since we needed to reschedule due to the weather yesterday. So we're going to talk a little bit about redistricting and what it is, and then Bill's going to talk through the various maps and the different perspectives, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments, including folks who are on Zoom. We will be able to take questions live from you when we get to that point. All right, so if we can go to, we're already there, the first slide. So what is redistricting, and do we need to undertake it? So redistricting is based on a constitutional principle that's known as one person, one vote. And it means that for jurisdictions that use election districts, and that means that the jurisdiction is divided up, and that to run for office, you need to live in a particular district, and then only voters in that particular district vote for that candidate. That's called a true electoral district. There are other systems as well where redistricting is not required. But if we use true electoral districts, which the school system does, then every 10 years after the federal census, we need to look at the districts and determine whether or not the population is still substantially equal. For local governments like the school board, we have a little bit of flexibility as far as the numbers. We get a range of plus or minus 5% of the ideal district population. Congressional, by contrast, has to have true equality. So if you look at the number of people in congressional districts, they are truly equal down to a rounding error. For local governments, we have a little bit more flexibility. We'll look at the data in a second, but to figure out that range and that ideal district size, you take the number of people who live in the jurisdiction, you divide it by the number of districts, and that yields the ideal size. And then we look to see whether the districts are within 5% above or 5% below. And if so, if all of the districts were within that range, then we would not need to redistrict. We could keep using the current districts for another 10 years. As you'll see in a moment, there are several districts that are outside that range, and that is not at all a surprise. Typically, especially with larger jurisdictions, that's going to happen over a 10-year period. The balance is just going to it's going to change, and it's going to go outside that range. So not a surprise there, but we have concluded, and the board has concluded, that we do need to undertake redistricting using the 2020 census data. Let's stay on that slide for just a second. So just going back to the concept of voting strength and one person, one vote. This is an extreme example, but if you think about a district with 10 people in it, and you're one voter in that district, you have a lot. Your vote is strong. You would only need 5 neighbors to come up with a majority to elect a candidate of your choice. If you live in a district with 100, by contrast, you need a lot more people to build a majority. And so that's why we want the districts to be substantially equal, so everyone's voting strength is about the same. So as far as the process, there's actually very little in the statutes that tells the board, tells local governments how to redistrict. It basically just says you have the authority to do it and you need to do it. So over time, we've developed a process. We think it works fairly well. We've had a lot of success in other jurisdictions, and we worked with the school board 10 years ago as well, and think that process worked just fine. So one, it all takes place in open public meetings. There are no closed sessions about redistricting. Everything is either at a regular board meeting, a special board meeting. a public forum like this. And we also do not have any private individual conversations with board members about the redistricting plans. Again, everything's out in the open so that the public can see and that we're transparent about what's occurring. The board, after we introduced the topic of redistricting, we went through various criteria that jurisdictions consider, things like compactness of districts, whether we want to start from the current districts or go with more of a clean slate approach. And the board considered and adopted criteria. I'll go through that in just a second. Once we had that, we took that and Bill, who's our map maker, drafted 3 alternative plans. And just let me explain the maps while we're at this point. So there's 2 sets of maps. The one further away from me towards the back, that set of maps shows the current plan on the left and then A, B, and C with the voting precinct lines shown on it. And then the next set of maps closer to me shows the current and the same 3 alternatives, A, B, and C, with the municipal lines on it. We couldn't get a good map that had both because it just became too confusing. But those are the maps that you see there, the same plan. There's the current and then A, B, and C. And so we drafted those maps based on the criteria that the board provided to us. Now, as Bill goes through those, you'll see how sometimes these guidelines and criteria can come into conflict. And so we take various perspectives in the different plans and we'll explain what those are. One plan, for example, really emphasizes keeping precincts whole, but there's some drawbacks to that. Some of the other plans emphasize others, but don't keep as many precincts whole. And so those are the sorts of things that we're wrestling with and that the board will need to wrestle with at the end of the process. So we presented the plans to the board and then they asked us to host these forums. This is the second of 2. We had one a couple nights ago at Southern Nash High School. And the board wanted us to go out, talk to people in the community, have conversations, listen to their questions, respond as we can. And then we're going to go back to the board and present what we heard and what we learned. And then the board will discuss and debate and eventually adopt a plan. And then we'll take the data and the maps and the files, send it over to the Board of Elections, and they'll be ready to go for the upcoming election. So I mentioned criteria. These are the criteria that the board gave to us. So first was to start from the current districts as opposed to just wiping the map clean and starting from scratch. That's very common that local governments asked to start from the current districts. We were asked not to pair incumbents, and again, very common criteria, and we did that in all 3 plans. We talked to the board about a concept that you could describe as accounting for future growth. It's optional, but the idea here is that if we know that certain parts of the community are growing faster, say, than other parts of the community, we still have to stay within that plus or minus 5% range, but we can take those faster growing areas and put them towards the bottom of the range so that over time, they'll hopefully stay in balance, and then the opposite with the slow growth areas. Again, it's completely optional. And what the board asked us to do was to draft one plan that follows that principle, and Bill will talk about that and how he did that, and 2 that did not. So we did that. We were asked to try to keep precincts whole. We were asked to try to keep the smaller municipalities whole. Rocky Mountain's not possible just given the numbers to keep whole. We were asked not to go out of our way to decrease the number of districts that cross over into Edgecombe County. And then we were asked to respect natural boundaries when possible. Those are things like rivers, railroad tracks, using a larger road as opposed to a neighborhood road as a district boundary. So those are the criteria that the board gave to us. And like I said, Bill took those and drew the plan. So I'm going to turn it over to him and he will go through the maps.
Thanks, Adam. I wanted to say another thing about conducting the process. We didn't talk to any individual members about outside of a public meeting about drawing plans. We also didn't talk to anybody who's considering running that we know about, into other political actors. And we did not look at partisan data. That's something that we consistently avoid. The first plan, these are the current districts, as you can see on the maps there, maybe even better than on the screen. And the next slide would, this is a close-up of the current districts in the Rocky Mount area. And then next, we've got the current districts with all the municipal lines there in Rocky Mount and the smaller municipalities there, including the ones that Sharpsburg and I believe it's Whitaker's that go over into Edgecombe. So next slide is the way the populations of the current districts stack up according to what they the deviation from the ideal number. The ideal population number for each of the 11 districts is 9,526, according to the 2020 census. And in the two columns on the right, you can see the deviations that the districts have from the ideal numbers. The real one to look at is the one on the far right, which is the percentage. That percentage needs to be, all the districts need to be within 5% plus or minus. That is 4.99% plus or minus from the ideal number. And as you can see, districts 2, 3, and 6, I've put the yellow, highlighted in yellow, the ones that are too big, that need to lose population. The one that needs to lose the most is District 2, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then District 6 also needs to lose population, a significant amount in District 3 in the west. And then Districts 8, 9, and 11 need to gain population. So the three districts that are within the right range now are 1, 4, 5, and 10. There's that 1, 4, 5, 7, and 10. Five districts are actually within the right range. It's not as easy to just leave them alone, leave those districts alone as it might seem. So in fact, in all of the plans that we drew, not all of the districts are changed, at least some. So then the next slide is going to be alternative A. So this alternative is the one that changes the current districts the least. It does not attempt to, I did make an attempt to keep precincts as whole as I could, but this one emphasizes keeping the districts the way they are over keeping the precincts whole. And I did not in this one attempt to account for population, expected population growth by putting the growthier districts at the bottom of the 5% range. That no attempt at that here. So next slide will show the Rocky Mount the Rocky Mount inset, and we'll talk about what happens with Edgecombe here. The same 4 districts go over across the tracks into Edgecombe as now. And then the next slide is going to show this is with the municipalities. Next slide would be side by side look at the current districts and alternative A. So you see they're there are some changes as there have to be, but the point here was to try to make the changes minimal. The next slide just shows, well, we're talking about the characteristics, which I think I've already mentioned, comes close. Well, if we could just go back there a second. Keeps each incumbent in a separate district with the same district number as now, keeps 8 precincts whole, current map keeps 6 precincts whole, keeps 5 municipalities whole, same as the current map, takes 4 districts into Edgecombe, same as current maps, and doesn't attempt to account for expected growth. So the next slide is these are the populations of the new districts. I guess all I can really say about them is that they're all within 5% plus or minus. Next slide would be alternative B. So you can go to Rocky Mount, to the next slide here. It will show the Rocky Mount inset. You can see the Edgecombe, the 4 districts going into Edgecombe. Next slide, with the municipal lines. Next slide, the side by side. Again, it kind of looks, you know, they kind of look the same, but there are some differences here from District A, because we come to the next slide and we're talking about the characteristics. Alternative B is the one we did try to take the expected growth into account and put the growth areas, the growth districts at the low end of the 5% range. And you asked us to talk to the county and city and municipal planning officials, and which we did. And I think we sent you some of the documents that they sent to us. The county planning department gave us a nice little thing of the development projects that are expected in the unincorporated part of the county. And then we took that into account. You know, I'll show that in a minute. But we also talked to the city planners, and we talked to to Shannon Davis, who works with this kind of thing with the school system, and he told us that expect growth in the western and southern part of the county, because pressure from Wake County. This is alternative B is generally similar to alternative A in the current districts. Keeps each incumbent in a separate district, keeps 8 precincts whole like alternative A, keeps 6 municipalities whole, which is more than, you know, 1 more than alternative A in the current plan, and it goes into takes 4 districts into Edgecombe. So the next slide is a composite of the information that we got from the various planning officials about where development is. The biggest development is appears to be just northeast of Bailey, the Williams Grove, I think it's Williams Village or something, but there's a big thing there, and some in Nashville, some in Spring Hope, and not so much in some in Red Oak, not so much in Rocky Mount, although there is a significant project called Belmont Forest that is still, things are still building up toward Wesleyan College. So the next slide will show alternative B with the areas of expected growth. And the districts with the areas of expected growth in them. And the next slide, I think, is going to be the populations. District 2, where Bailey is at the lowest end of the population range. District 4 with Nashville is low. District 3 on the western edge, District 7 with Red Oak, and District 11, which includes the Belmont Forest.
This is not time for questions, but low means the negative.
Right, exactly.
Low, I feel.
Right,
Can you say that
the
in
minus something percent. In some cases, grazing the minus 5%, and the higher ones like District 8 wound up being a higher one. It's plus 4.71%. Next slide would be alternative C. Okay, this has got precinct lines, and that's a thing to look at with alternative C, because this is the one where the precinct integrity was emphasized. The next slide shows the Rocky Mount area, and in this case, 3 of the districts go into Rocky Mount rather than 2. You can, rather than 4, right? And you can see the precincts in Rocky Mount. It can't keep the precincts within Edgecombe whole. But next slide, alternative C with municipalities. We also tried to keep municipalities whole here. And so the next slide, current map and alternative C. Still basically current map, but there are more differences here. Like you look down at the lower end of the county, the shapes are different. So next is the characteristic that keeps the precincts and municipalities whole to a greater extent than A or B, and attempts to preserve cores of existing districts, but does so less than A or B, and keeps but nonetheless keeps each incumbent in a separate district with the same district as now. This one keeps 14 precincts whole, which is a lot more than alternative A or B or the current map, and it keeps 8 municipalities substantially whole. Nashville is almost whole. The part that's not whole that doesn't have any people in it, but and so it takes 3 districts into Edgecombe. All the other maps take 4 there. Next slide would be the deviations. Again, all I can say is that they're all within 5% plus or minus. Next slide would be the side-by-side comparison of all 4 maps. And then the next slide would be the four side-by-side comparisons of the Rocky Mount inset. And then next slide, this is just a chart comparing splits. I messed this up the first time I did it. I put 4, but that's correct. I'm pretty sure. Next slide is just a big chart of the demographics of the districts, and we sent you all a larger chart than that includes this is total demographics of total population. We sent you another chart that has voting age population as well. So I believe the next slide just says questions and discussion.
So back up. Is it, so that's total population and not.
Hang on, just one second. I think we're gonna make sure that the comments.
So the charts on your deck are total population. Were
These-
charts made available to the public that were voting age population?
Right, it's a big spreadsheet that looks like this.
Is it on the website?
I believe it is, right. We wanted it to be, I think it is.
Other questions or comments, and if you just have want to express an opinion or preference, you're more than welcome to do that, and including folks who are online. Yes, ma'am. There's a question right behind you.
So as of right now, nothing has been completely determined about which of the three alternative maps you want to go with, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and when would we know when it will be decided?
So my what I think will be the case is that at the board's committee meeting next week, Dr. Ellis, Tuesday at the committee meeting, we will essentially present the board with what we've learned from the public sessions, and then they will discuss, and then I believe that it is their plan to vote the following Monday, April the 4th, I think. The board's regular April meeting, Monday, April 4th. It is my expectation that the board will take a final vote then.
The voting age population is not on the website. And I just assumed, because that's what matters, that must have been what was in your chart, since you didn't label it as total or the VAP. So, in the future going forward, it would surely have helped because we would have asked. So I would ask to see whatever you have, and maybe others who might be interested, get time to see that.
Sure.
Because that's the critical factor for, Black voting. The impact on the Black community is the voting age population. And in the future, it'd be helpful if you would label the chart whichever way, and we would then know what to ask for. Okay. I see that chart.
You can have that, and we'll make sure that it gets put up on the website if it's not. It sounds like it's not.
Thank you. And I'll share it with anyone else who wants to see it.
Other questions or comments? Last call. We'll hang around for a little bit and keep.
I have some comments, but I need to, and maybe I need to check this.
Okay.
But I definitely have some comments.
If people want to get up and look at the maps, we'll certainly stay for a while, as long as people want to engage with it. Folks who are online, again, you're more than welcome to ask questions.
But let me ask you this, I'll give you this back. I'm curious about what is the difference in voting age, Black voting age population for District 9, between current and alternative C, between the current plan and the new plan, because that was my major concern, but I don't know if I had the right numbers.
Can you pass that back up?
If you could pass it back up. Thanks. Okay, so District 9, you're talking Black VAP.
Yes.
District 9, current map 68.50. Alternative A, 66.77. Alternative B, 65.00. Alternative C, 52.26.
Well, I can still make my comment then. It's proportions are just whenever you get ready, and that won't hold, and it won't hold you up if nobody else has. Several comments I want to make, and my name is Angela Bryant. I don't know if you need, from Rocky Mount. Simply speaking, I think alternative A is best for our communities. One is sort of least, is closest to the status quo. And we previously in the current plan, at least on the total population, I'd have to check the BAP, have 4 majority Black districts. We lose a little percentage in one. It's not, go down from 50 to 40 and it fluctuates. Maybe it's down as far as 47-ish on the total. Now I have to compare BAP in alternative C, but we lose that anyway off the top. But in A, we keep things a pretty status quo in terms of areas that are in the districts. And these districts are complicated enough. You got 11 of them, so for people to know where they, who their representative is, and if, have been thinking maybe about running or whatever the case may be in some of these areas, that would surely be, I think, a plus. B is comparable as you see it. And I know from a community perspective, in the meetings I've been in with others and the ways and looking at them, we haven't seen much complaint about B. Some of the numbers change here and there, but the core communities stay intact. One of the concerns we have, some of us who care about the inner city, the underserved communities, they are already operating at a disadvantage in terms of political favor, if you will. And so it surely isn't going to help our system to further disadvantage or isolate them, because we already have trouble with isolation around expenditures. The new schools aren't going to be in our area. The newfangled things aren't going to be in our area. And that's not only about schools, it's across the board. So we don't want to worsen that. So A and B would give us pretty much status quo. C is troubling. While I understand the benefits of keeping precincts whole, and that surely is helpful as a person who's run for office a lot of times, having precincts whole is great for candidates, people running. Not always that great, even though it's clear to define stuff where people are voting. It's not always that great when it changes so much about, the districts they're in, their communities of interest, and who represents them. So they got to learn all that. It kind of negates all the advantage of, one person coming to you asking for your vote or something, in that neighborhood. But the more troubling part is by not crossing 4 districts into Edgecombe, not only does it further isolate Edgecombe, which is definitely in the less favored situation in the history of our district and the desegregation of our schools and all of that. It means the districts that you change don't come into the inner city. There's one District 9 that basically doesn't come into the inner city as much. So it takes, the person running in that district, but would be less, they might be a wonderful person and maybe willing to consider everybody's interest. And yet, practically speaking, they would be have to be less responsive. They could be, or likely would be less responsive to those inner city needs. So not only are we reducing District 9 by 10 or 12 points or something, whatever it is, 60s to the 50s, in Black population, in the map, we are replacing some of the inner city communities with strong communities of interest with Edgecombe by some of the best voting and more upper class white communities, two of them, the country club communities, if you will, which are wonderful people, but they will surely outvote the interests of the inner city communities, and anyone running would have to respond to that. I mean, if, you know, especially if it was competitive. So we just worry about it setting us back in all the work that we've done to try to create as much balance as we can under the circumstances, to make sure the inner city, underserved, but very segregated, predominantly Black communities and lower income, blue collar, working class, lower income communities get a fair shake and a chance to have strong voices. That's that's just of a serious concern. I think it will set us back tremendously and further isolate those communities from both the power base and, you know, the discourse and the ability to make, you know, to have their, you know, have any kind of leverage, if you will, around some of the key choices. And some people know that on the table, in, you know, we don't know when, could be, you know, years, could be, they're made on the table have, but there has been a movement in our county that has to demerge the schools. And you're familiar with that because your law firms have been involved. And that's a strong, you know, tide against some of these communities. And so if that should occur, we'll need the best and strongest representation we can of the communities that will be at most at risk and disadvantaged by that kind of decision. So not only will it impact and isolate the Edgecombe County areas, it will also more isolate the inner city Nash County areas that have most in common, you know, with those Edgecombe County areas, and build strength together in the city of Rocky Mount. So I think those would summarize my comments. But thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, we will adjourn then. And we will stay around for at least a few minutes if anybody just wants to browse. Oh, question from online. Hang on.
Okay, we have one question online. They're asking, will we get PDFs of the proposals? Not sure what that means.
The map, there are links to the maps up there. If you go to the school systems webpage, there's a landing page. I think it pops up for redistricting. And if you go onto that, then you can see PDFs of the maps. And Tremaine, why don't we go ahead and pull up the interactive maps? It's we can't do one of these without it. Bill's created a tool that we refer to as the interactive map, and it's a great one. And it's basically, it's a web-based application, and it has a map of the area as its base layer. And then it has a whole bunch of menu items on the top right that you can click on, and it will populate the map. So you can click on the button next to current plan, and it will basically create a map of the current plan, just like the one that's up here in the room. You can then unclick that and click on plan A, and it'll show you that. There are a couple of really nice features about that. One is that you can zoom way in to the street level, to the creek level, and really see the neighborhoods, which is hard to see on larger maps. And there also is we've got it up there now. So you can see right now the current maps are up, and the census blocks with the elementary schools are up. Let's go ahead and take that off. And why don't we put Nash and Edgecombe precincts up? Okay, so that shows the precincts we're in our current plan. So let's just go through a quick exercise and let's use Central Nash High School as an example. There's an address bar at the top left. And if we go ahead and put,
Yeah, Nash.
Click on the school.
okay, yes. So if you,
Put the name of the school.
Oh.
And it will.
yeah, so then it pulls that up. And if we click on it, it's going to zoom way into where we are and show you the result. And so then if you can zoom out a little bit to get a perspective,
Go back in.
maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's,
You scroll up.
no, it's just very sensitive.
Yeah.
Right, can I say something here? We have had a problem in the past of, or I have had a problem in the past of, if you zoom in real far, the district colors will disappear. And so every time you try to add anything to the map, you put yourself at risk of making of returning to that problem again. So I fixed it today with this particular map. I think it still works with all the maps.
Now we got Florida, South Carolina.
I'm telling you.
This puts things in perspective.
Right. Okay, so you see right there that Nash Central is in yellow, which is District 5. Okay, so now let's unclick current and click A. And so you see in Plan A, Nash Central is not changing districts. It's still in District 5. So then let's unclick A and just quickly look at B and C. B is all the way up here.
I got something in the way.
Okay.
Is it not translate? Oh, it's showing on my screen. Okay, hold on, let me reshare it. Here we go. Okay.
Great. So alternative B is still District 5. Let's look real quick at alternative C. Again, still District 5. So if you lived at Nash Central High School, your district would not change under any of the plans. And so we encourage people to do that with their address or an address that matters to them. You can run through all the cycles and see whether there are any changes. So that is the interactive maps, a great tool.
Can you show people how to make a comment? Can you do it?
Oh, sure. Yep. If
Okay.
we go to that web landing page.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go to the main school system page just so everybody can start from it. So go to the main page and then right here, there's the census redistricting information. So if we click on that, there's some information, there are live streams, there's our PowerPoint. Here, down here is the interactive map link. That's what we just looked at. There are PDFs of alternatives A, B, and C right there. And then, yeah, if we go back up a little bit, we'll show you the online comment link. It says public input Google form response. If you click on that, it opens up a very simple page where you can give any feedback that you wish on the various alternative plans. And then that'll be pulled together and we'll share that with
And you're gonna get
the voting age population.
as soon as you can.
Yes,
And you have to have it.
you can have this. Anything else? All right, well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to the folks online, and please feel free to comment, to reach out to board members, to come to the board meetings. And I know the board is very interested in hearing from the public, and they've definitely, by asking us to do this, they've really gone above and beyond what's required by law. And I think they have a great process, and we appreciate people coming.